In this video, we'll talk about arrays. So let's see why the arrays were introduced. So normally we'll use variables to store a data or a value, right? So when the program becomes complex, we'll be needing much more values to be stored inside the program. So in that case, let's say we need 100 data to be stored. Will it be a good practice to use 100 different variables to store 100 different data? No, right? So in such case, we need some common variable which can store all the 100 data. So that is where arrays comes to the picture. So array is just another variable, okay? It is another kind of a variable where we can store multiple values, okay? So there are certain things to array, so which we'll see here. So array is a variable which can store multiple values. The main important thing is all the values inside the array must be of the same data type, okay? So that is the main thing. And now we have a question. If we have one value stored in a variable, we can simply access the variable, so we'll get the value, right? Whereas in case of an array which can store multiple values, how we can access each and every value from that? Or if we want to access a particular value from the array, how we can access it? So that is where index comes to the picture. So index is what we use to address or identify a value inside the array, okay? And the most important thing is index always starts with 0, okay? So considering these factors about array, we'll see how we can declare and initialize an array. So there are multiple ways to declare an array. So this is how. So all you need to do is, let's say if you want to create an array of any type, you put the data type first and then followed by the square brackets. So once you put this box kind of thing, it will consider we are going to declare an array, okay? So followed by our normal variable name. So now this is the array name called numList, where I'm going to store multiple numbers. So you can directly assign in the array just like this. Inside the curly brace separated by commas, you have to put the values, okay? So this is one way of declaring an array and assigning values to it. And another way is you can declare like this. You put the data type, your square brackets, then the array name equals to, you can put new integer of square brackets, then your curly braces. Both are same, there's no difference. It's just a different syntactic way of writing the code, okay? And here the third one, it looks a bit different from the above two, because here I'm not assigning any values, I'm just putting the number 4. So what this number 4 indicates here, it tells the compiler that I'm going to store only 4 values inside this array, okay? So I'm just declaring the array here, whereas in the first two ways I declared the array, then I initialize the value as well, right? Here also I initialize the value, whereas in the third one I just declared the array, I haven't assigned any values to it. So what I did is I just declared and mentioned I'm going to create an array of size 4. So what the compiler will do is it will automatically assign the default values to this array, okay? So the default value of integer is 0. So zeros will be stored inside the array, okay? So one main thing we need to know here is how arrays are getting stored inside the memory. So here our numList 1, 2 and 3 are the array reference variables, okay? So they are allocated in stack memory, whereas these values, right? So array is actually an object, okay? So they get stored in heap memory. So heap memory is vast, where we can store a whole big data, but it is a little bit slower. But stack memory is very limited, but it's fast. So how the array how array gets stored in the memory is our variable will be in the stack memory, which will be pointing to a memory location in the heap memory, okay? So one very important thing to know about array is, consider this is the memory. So here, take this example, okay, the third example where we are allocating an array of size 4. So coming to the memory, so this is how our memory looks like. Let's say some of the memory spaces are occupied, some are empty. Now we have a requirement of, I'm going to copy this, so just as we know what we are doing here. So this is the array I'm trying to allocate. So looking at the memory, you can see this is occupied, this space is occupied, so, and these are empty. So but array will not, though these places are empty here, it will not go and sit on the empty spaces directly. Okay, so what it will do is, it will look for continuous empty spaces. Okay, physically the memory should be available next to each other, only then the array will get stored. Here as my size is 4, so considering the size 4, this array will allocate in these spaces here. Okay, I'm going to put let's say number 0 here. Okay, number 0 to indicate that I'm going to store the data here. Since we have continuous physical memory spaces adjacent to each other, these 4 spaces are occupied for this particular array. Imagine if I have size 2, it will occupy these spaces because I have continuous 2 spaces here. So this array can easily accommodate. Okay, so this is how array will be allocated in your memory. Okay, it will look for physical continuous spaces. So this has some advantage to it because it can easily access the data. You see, if you want to access the first data, it can quickly access it. If you want the second data, it can quickly access. So the turnaround time to find the data inside an array is very faster. Okay, that is an advantage of an array. Now let's go back. Okay, so here I had allocated the array, but I haven't assigned any values. So this is how you assign values to your array. As I said, index always starts from 0, right? So you put the array, then you put the square brackets, then as I said, index starts from 0. So you put the number 0 equals to whatever the value you want, you can put here. So that means you are allocating the value 100 in the 0th index of numList3 array. Here I have allocated size 4. That means we have 4 indexes available. So if I want to access the second index of an array, I just have to put the next number, which is 1. So here I have 4 values. So I'm using the indexes 0, 1, 2, 3 and assigning to the each index of the numList3 array. Okay, so all you need to do is, array always starts from 0th index, so you can put 0 and then you can assign the value just like this. So let's see how we can access the elements of an array. So technically speaking, we will call the values inside the array as elements. Okay, so how we can access the elements of an array? So there are 2 different ways to access an array. So we can access using a for loop, or we can access using a for each loop. So this is to access all the elements of an array. If you want to access individual element, you can simply put the array name and then put the index, you will get the value. Okay, so sorry, I had missed out. So I just have to put the whatever the array, then put the square brackets and mention the index whichever you want to access. So let's say I want to access the second index value, I just put 2 here. That's it. Okay, so this will, so since I put 2 here, if you look at the numList1 array, so this is 0th index, this is first index, this is second index. So this will print me the value 3. So what I'm going to do is, the element in the second index is so this will print me the value 3. So let's run the code. Okay, We'll see the code together. So now so this is a simple for loop which I had created here. As I said, array index always starts from 0, so you initialize the array with 0. We have no idea how much the size of the array, right? Let's say now we know we have 4 values, so we know the array size is 4. Imagine in a program which you are going to create in future, you have no idea how much the size we are going to be. So what we can do is, so you just put the array name, then put dot, then you will have this length property which you can use. So these are predefined properties which you can make use of it. Okay, so this is to get the total size of the array. So I'm writing I less than numList of 3 dot length I plus plus. So this loop is going to finally run for me to access all the values of the array. Okay, so if you initialize in this way, you will be able to get all the values of the array. Then inside the loop, I'm just going to put a print statement and then pass the value I. So this I is supposed to print me all the values from 0 to the end of the index. So I'm just going to pass that index variable I here to print all the values of the array. Okay, so this is a traditional for loop. Okay, I'm going to put in front of the array. So our for loop. Okay, so whereas there is a special for loop which is specifically designed for array is a for each loop. Okay, so how we can write a for each loop is, you put for, inside the brackets we don't have to initialize any index. We don't need a structure like this. All you need to do is put a semicolon, put a colon, and then you pass the array name here to the right. Okay, so after that, what is the type of the array? numList2 array, it's integer, right? So you declare a temporary variable to the left of the colon. So to the right of the colon you pass the array, to the left of the colon you create a temporary variable of that array type. So now what will happen is, this element variable is going to hold each and every value of the array for each and every iteration. So in the first iteration it will hold the 0th index value. The second iteration it will hold the first index value. Likewise it will keep on going. Okay. So that's how we'll be able to access all the elements of the array in a for each loop. So in this, the advantage here in for each loop is we don't have to worry about the indices. So we just simply declare the array, create a temporary variable and access the temporary variable to access each element of the array. Whereas in here you have to create an index, create a temporary variable, and you need to know which index it starts from, which index it ends from. So here one advantage is you will be able to quickly access all the elements. The advantage of using a traditional for loop is you will be able to selectively access which elements of array you needed. Okay, in this case we don't have control over which element we want and which element we don't want. In here we know which index we are mentioning, right? Let's say if I put index 2, so it will access the index starting from 2. The 0th index and first index value are omitted here, so easily I can. And here if I put length -1, what will happen is, whatever the length of the array, it will subtract from it, so that I will be able to access value before the last value. Okay, so this is how we'll be able to you shrink or trim our array and access the values accordingly. So I'll put, so this loop is going to print me all the values. Okay, now to modify the values of the array, you just have to access that array index and put assign value to it. Now we will run the code and see what is the output. So I have print statement starting from here. Okay, the first output says the element in the second index of numList1 is 3. So we'll see. So you see numList1, 0th index, first index, second index, it is 3. So the same what I had it here. See, I'm accessing I'm accessing the index 2. So the index 2 value is 3. And then we're printing using the traditional for loop. So I'm starting from 0 and I'm going to, the loop is going to execute until the end of the array. So the numList values, numList 3 values are 100, 200, 300, 400. All the values are printed. Whereas in the for each loop, we are printing the numList 2. It is also printing me 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay. So I'm going to print the same numList 2. Okay. So with the traditional for loop as well. So it is also going to print me 10, 20, 30, 40. Now the advantage of printing using the traditional for loop is, let's say I don't want the first index, zeroth index, and I don't want the last index. So what I'm doing is I'm just modifying. I just incremented the first index, decremented from the last one. So which means I just did subtraction to the last one. I incremented the value from 0 to 1 in the first value. So now if you look the array, you will be omitting 10 and 40. You'll have a 10, 20 and 30 only as the output here. So there we go. It is printing me 20 and 30. So that is the main advantage of using a for loop. You can selectively ignore whichever index you don't want. And in the last, modifying the values of an array. Before modifying, the numList 1 of 0 was actually holding me the value 1. After I'm assigning this value like this, I'm accessing the same location in the array, which is having the value 1000, because here I have assigned the value to be 1000. So that's how you'll update the values of your array. I hope this video helps. Thank you.